Welcome to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. This is the place to be for stories to inspire and uplift when life doesn't go according to our plans. I'm Laura Muirhead, your host and the reigning queen of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I can't wait to share the plot twist stories of my guests that will inspire and uplift you when life didn't follow the plan, right here on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. Hello, and welcome to this episode of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I am your host, Laura Muirhead, and I am thrilled to welcome today Michelle Aspinwall to the podcast. Welcome, Michelle, and come and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure for us to finally get together, having been connected, through various other people in our lives. So it's a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're right. I think we've kind of known each other virtually through social media for a while. And it's always fun to finally be virtually face to face and get to know someone a little bit more. So now you tell me what you do and what you do as far as, and I think your story leads up to this too, but what do you currently do in the world?
So currently, I have coined myself as the body whisperer. I mean, a client said that to me not very long ago. It's probably been about 5 months ago that someone called me that. And you know that moment where someone will say something to you and every cell in your body just kind of tingles? And as soon as she said that, before that, I was sort of like I called myself an age alchemist, because the work that I do with women around health, around aging, around what we consider beauty and the aging process, that included hormones, it included nutrition, sleep, all of the sort of typical lifestyle medicine that those of us who are not in the MD sphere sort of practice, right, in our own lives, as well as how we work with people. But then it became very clear to me about 2.5 or 3 years ago, what I thought was just intuition. Over the past, now it's almost a year, I've recognized that I've stepped into this new role of really being able to read a woman's energy. And so the body whisperer kind of came through this sort of unfortunate that turned fortunate experience where my mother, basically turned into an activator for me. She became someone who was part of opening up these gifts, that I think really most people have. It's just how we connect in with ourselves, with the energy around us, and of course how we use it. We everyone has different realms and different ways that they can look at and read and interpret energy. And mine just happens to be, I'm very connected to the vessel and all the workings of the vessel. So women's bodies have this language and they speak very deeply to me. I can hear things, I can sense things, I can feel things. And at first I thought that was intuitive. And now I'm starting to really trust and learn and lean into and really change. My mission has always been to change the trajectory of women's health, especially women's health over 40. I think it in the past has been slightly dismal. And I think Generation X, as we all are, most of us are, we're really shaping and changing what women's health looks like. We're getting loud, we're getting excited, and we want change. And so that's who I am and what I do in a nutshell, basically.
That's an amazing, that's just amazing. I love the body whisperer part of it. I love that somebody else sort of coined it for you, because it does, I do feel like that frequently happens where we're, we think we're whatever in our minds. And then when someone says that, you're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And I think sometimes it almost feels better that we're not the ones that came up with it to label ourselves, that somebody else recognized that in us and we're able to embrace that and own it. And I love that. And I also want to say that I agree with you on women's health. I remember a few years ago, because here I am well over 40, and when I started to go to the doctor just after 40 and having, maybe this happening or that happening, and the doctor saying, well, you're getting old. And you're like, I'm not just gonna resign myself to that. Well, I'm getting older, so everything can just fall apart in my body. No, I'm not gonna resign myself to that. And I love that this is what the work that you do, and to hopefully have more women recognize that we don't have to just be resigned to, the aches and the pains and the illnesses that have in the past sort of been acceptable on that level. I love that. Now, the other thing I wanted to say to you, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, because I have a little connection with you after looking at your reading some things on your website. So before we go there, to the other things, so tell me how you came to be a body whisperer.
So it's interesting. There are two parts to this story, but I'm going to begin with the second part and then I'll just sort of work the first part in because I don't actually want it to be about the first one. I think what we're really going for here is the second story. So just about a year ago, last year, so it's been about a year, my mother, who is at the time was only 75, almost 76, and she was in really good health, wasn't on any medication, had this episode where she basically had a TIA. So she had sort of a mini stroke. It's a precursor to a larger stroke. And there's actually no physical diagnosis, or there's a diagnosis based only on symptoms. There is no testing that one can do to actually confirm a TIA, which I thought was very interesting. We in the health in the medical world, we've taken a lot of, especially over the last 7 years, we've taken a lot of symptoms and we've just rearranged them and clustered them and given them a name. And I think in giving things a name, we're enabling people, and women especially, to sort of hold on to a diagnosis as an entity that's sort of like we wear it or we hide under it or we carry it. We're a card carrying member. I mean, I was definitely a card carrying member of Hashimoto's and autoimmune disease. It's very common in the female population, and especially women as they get older and move through the reproductive years. Mine happened to my late 20s and early 30s, and it took me years to get a diagnosis. But the interesting thing is, so my mom got very sick. She had this TIA. She didn't realize what was going on. She tried to reach her doctor. Her doctor didn't call her back for many days. And then when he did, he said, I need you to go to the emergency room immediately, because of course, a TIA, if it's left unchecked and unmonitored, can lead to a stroke. It usually does lead to a full on stroke episode within 48 hours. So she was very lucky. She didn't end up having another stroke. She was in the hospital, was asked a lot of questions. She was very lucky. There were no physical or neurological issues that happened. At this point, I didn't have a phone call. I didn't know. She was trying to protect me. She's that kind of mother. She's stoic. She believed that she was going to be fine. And of course, she did end up being fine. Well, I'm giving away the story, but she ended up being fine. But throughout the hospital, she met a couple of doctors, a neurologist, and a cardiac specialist. So she had these two doctors running tests on her. She had some unusual cardiac levels, so they were monitoring her heart and monitoring her brain, of course, because strokes often affect both. So then she gets out of the hospital, and the neurologist puts her on a particular medication. And this medication was quite strong and quite potent. And it is a very new medication. She's not a pill taker. My mom doesn't like to take pills, didn't want to take pills, but she ended up taking it. She was like, I'm going to be the good patient. I'm going to do what they say. We women are very good at doing as we're told, maybe too good at it and maybe for too long, but that's another story for another day. And what ended up happening was, over the course of the next 2 weeks, so she told me about the episode once she got home, I started tapping into her energy immediately. I started feeling the fear and the panic of what she was being told and how she was feeling. She was feeling very good, but being told she wasn't good. And that those two elements coming together were creating a storm in her body. And I could feel that storm. And so what I tried to do was sort of talk her through, okay, what was going on before? Because there wasn't a lot of talk about what were your blood levels, what were your symptoms, what are your signs? Because as women, a lot of women live in the health realm, we live in the now. We don't think a whole lot about the past. And if we only think about the future, we think about the future from a worry standpoint, not of how do I want to feel my greatest, uh, what is the greatest I can feel in the future. In fact, we usually think only of decline and not of going up. And my belief is we go up and up and up always, only and always. And it's, if you take that on, then you start to see all the ways that you can. But unfortunately, we take on the negative, and a lot of the negative doesn't necessarily originate in our heads. It originates from what we're being told or shown or what we've witnessed in our lives in the past through loved ones or, misinformation. So I move in. So making a long story, hopefully not too long, I move in with my mom because, or excuse me, before I move in with my mom, she takes this medication. Within 5 days, she starts getting dizzy and passing out and literally falling to the ground. So the first time it happened, she she bruised a rib, but with bruised ribs, you don't always know the damage for 24 hours. So she got in a car, took a little trip with her sister, and ended up in another state. And it happened again 48 hours later. And that's when she hit her head and bruised more ribs, and she was in massive amounts of pain. At that point, she's in the hospital, gets another diagnosis that she had actually had a pulmonary embolism, which is basically a clot that had traveled from her leg up through her heart, and she was very lucky to have made it. Most people, 60% of the population, doesn't live from an episode like that. So not only did she make it through the TIA, but she made it through the pulmonary embolism. So at that point, she's in a hospital in North Carolina. She lives in Maryland. I get the phone call. I'm talking to my aunt. We're trying to figure out what's going on. They get her back up to Maryland. I'm talking to my mom, and I say to her, listen, my mom is not one to want help. She was thinking that she was just going to have an aide live with her for a week and then she would be fine. And I knew after these two episodes, she was going to need a lot more love, not so much care in the physical realm, but the love aspect of surviving this, and then sort of discerning. Because I really believe as women, we need to have discernment in information that we get and then how we react, our perception of information, that she was going to need that support and that person to bounce ideas, and then that, also just having that outside perspective of let's try this and let's do this. And also I wanted to take the burden of like this medication and this time and taking your blood pressure and dealing with this and making that phone call and the insurance, setting up the apps, like all of the stuff that comes along with healthcare that actually isn't healthcare, right? So, but a necessary evil of it. So I move in with my mom. I ended up living with her for 6 weeks. And through this process, we're very close generally, but through this process, we became even closer. And I recognized once the fear of like she could literally die in my arms, once I sort of got over that fear of like, I'm going to wake up and my mom's going to be dead on the floor in the bathroom. Um, and if my mom listens to this, sorry, mom, for like verbalizing that, but I'm sure you thought that thought too. What I realized about 2.5 or 3 weeks in, after she started, I implemented a lot of the a lot of the lifestyle medicine that I do, that I work with women. We lowered her cholesterol, we lowered her blood pressure, and she lost about 35 pounds while I was living with her for 6 weeks. Now, she's not a petite woman. There was definitely some weight to release at that point, but it was effortless. And in fact, she said many times over, and I find this happens with a lot of women who work with me, that although they come to me to lose weight, what they actually gain is a whole new perspective on the brilliance of their body and also how easy it is to release weight. So through this whole time of working with my mom, what I realized in her was that her connection to her body had become over time, right? Because nothing happens overnight. It's always this process of time. It's like a cancer cell takes about 10 years to actually become a tumor. So it's this process of over time of both the energetics of cancer, the biology of cancer, and then the physiology of the body and how the body rearranges itself, It doesn't want something growing in it, but that's the way the body does, is it gathers everything up and puts it together instead of having it floating all over the place, right? So there's a madness around health that people don't necessarily understand. And so in living with my mom, what I recognized is that after that initial fear passed, I was not her caregiver. I was literally working with her energy every single day, and in doing the practical work and watching how she responded, some days it was incredible, and some days it was fear, and some days it was anger. It was watching her body process that commitment to herself, where she had always been committed to everyone around her, her job, her ex husband, the people who worked for her, her family, her nieces and nephews, her mother, her siblings. And the connection to herself had been severed long ago, and she needed to learn to reconnect with her body. And that, of course, is the gift. The gift of life is that reconnection with the vessel that we get to live in, right? And then my role in this was to recognize how this level of care, having the opportunity to live with my mother and to really see, I of course work with women all the time, but I'm not living with them, and I'm certainly not in necessarily the trenches with them 24/7, right? But I was with my mom. And so having that opportunity, I was activated on a whole new level to understand and step into the role of what I now claim as the body whisperer. But at the time, I was reading her energy and explaining to her, you don't actually need this medication at this dosage. Why don't we try this, this, and this? And then, so I also, at any given time, am a biohacker. Like, I'm an integrated biohacker. So most people think of biohackers as like these big souped up, like ex-military guys, but like I really enjoy, I'm like a science nerd, and I really enjoy connecting in with the biological and physiological aspects of the human body, especially the female body. And because we are very different than men, how we work, how we function, and what our, you know, evolutionary role in this crazy 3D evolution of life, right? Is. And so what I was showing her, I was combining all the elements of me from the past and then stepping into this new role as really someone who worked on both the physical. It's like where science and spirituality really met. It was like a crossroads. And it was a beautiful gift. And I told her about 4 weeks in, I said, she kept thanking me. And I have two teenage boys, and she kept saying, you have to go home. You have to go home to your boys. And I said, Mom, I am here for a reason. Like, you are activating me in the same way that I am activating them to step into, young man, and they're learning to care for themselves in a whole nother way. And they were connecting with their father. I mean, they have a great relationship with their dad, don't get me wrong, but it was like everything in my life, everything in her life, and everything in our connected lives was so beautiful. It was so deliberate, and it was such a divine plan. It couldn't have worked out better in the end. And to understand that and actually see it and live it in real time, for me, was a massive gift. And it allowed me the opportunity to believe in divine timing, in the energetic healing of the divine feminine, of the goddess energy, the true goddess energy. And not only that, but to really step into my greatest role. Also, I turned 50 in the same year. So in the same span of 12 months, I've turned 50. I've studied human design. I've like 50 is a big milestone for me in terms of my authority and authority. And it's all been so very interesting. So that was kind of the funny thing, is this thing that turned out to be such a devastating and could have been disastrous. Although there's nothing better than not dying alone, right? Like to die with your daughter. Like, I don't know, I just felt like if that was the rite of passage, that was my gift to her and her gift for me, I so to speak. But she's great.
I love this on so many different levels. I mean, you're just speaking to my heart, because I I don't know as much about health as you do, but I had my own health journey a few years ago, and through that, and through working with, and I should say I guess we're all continuing on a health journey, but
Always.
my big challenge was a few years ago, at least that at that time. And um, I, I was, I ended up, I'm not going to tell all the details because I want to keep this focused on you, but I ended up, because of back issues, they wanted me to have back surgery. Of course, the back surgeon did. And it turned out that I ended up working with a acupuncturist who also did more functional medicine.
Hmm.
And through the acupuncture and the exercises that she gave me, she was the first doctor ever who, in my first visit, like asked me all these questions about my eating habits, my, all these things that I was like, how is this related to my back? Right. And she gave me 5 books to read on my first visit.
Good
This
for
book, this
her.
book, this book, read these books. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, it was really a wake up for me, because it was like, the doctor, the doctors don't do that. They just go, here's your pill, have a
Hmm.
good day. Here's your surgery, have a good day, right? And it was definitely a journey, and we changed some of my eating habits, because here's the connection. I had She told me I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis as well. The other doctors, the previous doctor that I had seen right before that, because of this issue I was having, the traditional medical doctor, the traditional American medical doctor that I was seeing, when I got my blood levels, I just went in for a regular checkup, and some of my thyroid levels were whacked. And he was like, "No, no, that you're okay. You don't need to see me." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I didn't know, but and this really struck me, looking back. He said, "We'll just test you in another 3 months. We'll do another blood test. If your levels are the same, then that's just your normal. That's just you."
Mm.
And so I learned through this other doctor that I went to, that, and one of the things that I keep seeing now, popping up on social media, is what they say is normal isn't optimal. And
Hmm.
she told me that. She's like, just because they say this is where it should be, it's not optimal. That's not where your body works the best.
Hmm.
And so, longest story ever short, try to make it short, is that I never had back surgery. And but she didn't, I did the acupuncture, we changed my diet, but she didn't do it. I had to do it. I had to do the exercises. And also, I mean, yes, her treatment obviously helped hugely, but she was the first. And so I love this. I love all of this. And I love that I mean, literally, I did, like, this is what I love about these episodes also, is that I didn't know this, obviously didn't know this whole story until you started telling me and the audience today, our listeners. And it is just resonating with me on so many levels. And I love that you were able to, my dad years ago had a TIA and went immediately into the hospital. And so he got put on whatever. But I love that you were able to, number one, commit to spending the time with her, but also see how it evolved for the greater good of your family, your sons, your
Yeah.
mother, and you really being able to I guess, again, evolve into this, realizing what your talents are and what your gifts are, to work with her on this, on the energy level. And I just love, I mean, I'm loving all of this. So I'm happy that your mom is doing so well. And I love that you have these talents that you're able to embrace and work with, because I also think that a lot of people, like, you might have been like, "Oh, yeah, I helped her, but let's move on." I'm
Yeah.
not, it might not happen again, yeah, but you clearly have all these things. And I love what you're saying also about, the disease in our body, like, it just didn't appear one day.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
I love that, and that we do, especially I think as women tend to, I love what you're saying about your mom, like coming back into herself, into her body. And because we do tend to serve all these people and
Mm.
forget, and also just accept, again, accept that these are the things that just happen as you get older.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't really believe that. And if you look at evolution, if you really were to study evolution or even to study the centurion, um, call, pockets of people that live beyond 100, and there are, I don't know, 7 or 9 of them in the country currently. I mean, they live very fruitful, very active, very prosperous, very grounded lives, and they're not, spending the last 10 years of their life kind of doubled over in a wheelchair having care. And I don't want to say that our elderly tax the system, but it definitely can be. There is an alternative, is what I have to say. But and what I will say for women, and again, women's physiology is different, or their biology is different than men's biology. Is that what a woman's life looks like? What we create around 40 and 50, our 40s and 50s, sets the trajectory of our health in our 70s, 80s, and 90s and beyond. So it doesn't. Health isn't there is an element that is in the moment, but there is also a cumulative, evolution. And that cumulative starts now when the cascade of hormones, when our hormonal situation starts to change. And I'm not one to believe, I mean, I'm 50, I'm full on in I'm very soon to hit my menopausal journey. And I've been in perimenopause for 8 years, like very definitely for 8 years and maybe even longer, but I didn't start testing until 42. And so what I know for sure is that it is a journey. Menopause is not a medical condition at all. It's a journey, and it is very unique and specific to women. And it brings me great sadness for the medical community and for just the world at large to really kind of, it's this thing that we don't talk about. It's this thing that's looked down upon, that an aging woman is sort of in her decline, when in my experience I've never felt stronger than I do now, right now. I mean, there's physical elements where I'm not as strong as I was 20 years ago, but in my physical health, like in actual my biomarkers and the way that my brain is so very sharp, I'm actually way ahead than I was 20 years ago. And that is I'm not special, I'm not unique. It is available to everyone. But it starts with really taking radical responsibility. Nobody is going to save us from menopause. Nobody is going to save you from cancer. No one is going to save me from a stroke. It all begins with how I choose to do life on a daily, hourly, monthly, yearly basis. It truly begins there.
Well, and I love this again. I think that so many people that I feel like the old school way of thinking, the old way of thinking was the genetics are just passed down and passed down, and you're just here you are, basically whatever's passed down to you is what you're going to get. If grandma had gallstones, you're going to get gallstones. If grandpa, like, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and my mom has some medical issues, and she's 85.
Mhm,
So one of the things a few years ago, she was having some um, lung issues, breathing issues, and the doctors started. She went to a new doctor, and the doctor was asking her the typical history. Did your parents have cancer? Blah 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 blah. Well, yes, both of my grandparents ended up with cancer. But let's think past that.
mhm,
My grandfather smoked, and my grandmother lived with him. And that was back when you smoked in the house, you smoked in the car with the windows up, and so there's no solid proof that grandma got cancer from grandpa, but I believe she did.
mhm,
And I believe that, and my grandfather also worked in a steel mill. So, like, his environment was not a healthy environment.
mhm,
So then let's fast forward to the doctors asking me or my mother or any of my cousins, oh, did your grandparents have cancer? Yes. Oh, so you're just susceptible to that? No, I don't buy it. I do subscribe to the let's take some personal responsibility, and let's see what we're eating. Let's see what we're exposing our bodies to. Let's see what we're energetically, like you're talking about too, exposing our bodies to. What are we emotionally exposing ourselves to and mentally? So, I mean, this is like to me, what you're saying, to paraphrase, is just the whole picture. Like, how are we going forward with the whole picture? And I don't buy into the old school thinking anymore at all on these things.
Not to mention, Laura, the when we think about health, when we think about the vessel, the body, right? The body is a vessel that contains, it's something like 12 different systems, right? Circulatory system, reproductive system, neuro, all of that, right? But we don't ever really talk about the chakra system and how the chakra system plays into and the energy of the body that's generated through the electromagnetic connection that we have to the sun, to our brain, to our system that, our nervous system that runs down the spine and then wraps around and connects to all the various systems in the body. And you can learn so much. It's so interesting to me that pain is only one marker in the body. It's like one of the latest markers. There are many other markers that happen before that, but we aren't necessarily tapped in, tuned into the precursors to pain. So once pain hits the neurological system, we have not listened to the energetics. We have not listened to the messages and signs, our intuitive voice that happens within. And so when we think about healing, healing is such a unique and personal experience, unique to the individual and personal in that what is ailing you is usually not that the place and the pain are not usually uh, connected. So back pain doesn't necessarily mean there's a disc issue. It does sometimes, but it doesn't always. In the same way that shoulder pain or stomach pain doesn't necessarily mean that you have an issue with your stomach. It's just where the body has manifested. It's where it's usually, in my experience in doing these body whisper sessions, where I listen to women and I take them on a voyage through their body and their organs talk to me. What I really want women to understand is you are your own greatest healer. And the more you go inward and you listen and you trust and you lean in, and then you breathe through, you act on, and you allow the healing to take place, because after all, we're mammals. We are made to heal ourselves. Our bodies are made to heal ourselves if given half the chance. So I think it's important to understand that and to recognize that when we go in, instead of going out, if we go in and we listen, we have all the knowledge and information. And yes, occasionally the body's so far along that a medication for a short bit or a shift in diet or a change in a lifestyle, of course, all those things will benefit. But the true healing goes when you start with the energy of what the body is telling you, because of course we are the creators of what happens in our life. We magnetize the things that either we're afraid of or that we desire, depending on the energy that you live in. And then we perceive how that happens. How does it happen? Does it happen because I wear the special underwear, I have the special crystal, or because I do a certain routine in the morning? Or does it happen because this is my destiny and this is how my mother did it and that's how her mother did it, right? So we perceive we create a lot of stories about how things happen. And I think we can use that to our advantage or we can use that to our disadvantage. And that's where reading the energy of the body and listening to how the organs have such a beautiful dialogue with each other. And then when someone is in a diseased or a low vibrational state, that organ will vibrate at a different frequency. And that's what I feel, or that's what I sense, or that's what I hear. So sometimes I hear them talking, sometimes I feel them, or sometimes I can see it. If I get the opportunity to see someone, I can usually see it, because the face is like the foot. The foot has all these different magical places you can actually access, from a traditional Chinese medicine. You can access everything off the foot, off the spine, and off the face. So it's an interesting precursor to be able to read someone's face, maybe even look at someone's tongue and really see what's going on internally and externally.
Yeah. And let's talk for a minute about in conjunction with that, like the stress that we hold or the experiences that we hold in our bodies, and that, I mean, do you feel, I mean, I feel like that's some of the reason why the disease is expressing, or maybe it is the weight that you're holding or whatever it is, because of some of our past experiences that we may still be holding on, so it's still on this energetic level, right, of holding up things in our body. Do you feel that way as well?
100%. I mean, the body is miraculous. The body is brilliant. I mean, it's beyond brilliant. It's beyond anything that even we can comprehend in the year 2022. But our bodies have this, they're incredibly adaptive and they're receptive. So they're receptive to what's coming in and then they're adaptive to the situation. So, for example, if you live in a situation where the water has a particular element in it and maybe you're taking in that element, that, certain people, like I've worked with women who have a copper toxicity or who have a mercury toxicity or who have, and there's a lot. I just want to say that there's a lot of in the health and wellness sphere, and I very early on, 5 6 years ago, 7 years ago when I was first starting out, in the first 3 years I was just reading and kind of like regurgitating the stuff that I was reading. And I just was like a sponge for the info. And then I was just trying to be a voice to get it out. And one of the ways that I talk about health, I'm able to take information and just distill it to make it simpler and more digestible. And so I think that was early on. That's what I did. But then as I started to really work with women, when women really started to come to me, and I started to see patterns, I started to do testing, I started to look at blood work, and I started to correlate. Now, that was helpful to a certain extent because that helped me say, okay, you live in this certain area, this kind of thing, and you have this kind of practice, you need to do this. So there's certain things that you can definitely put into categories, but the really interesting work is the work I've been doing the past 2 years. And that's when I really combine all the knowledge and information with the energy and really listening to the organs. And yes, I mean, certain women hold stress. So the chakra system, I'm sure your audience is incredibly intelligent and they already are familiar with the chakra system. But a lot of people like to really work up in the higher chakras, but the lower three chakras, the root chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus, that is our safety, our day to day, and our creative sort of our this is our everyday. This is our survival. This is our what propels us forward. So if we're not balanced, if we're not recognizing those chakras where there's imbalances or dis-ease in the body, the upper three are not going to, you're not going to be getting information that's necessarily accurate and helpful to you. And then, of course, the heart in the middle is, everything's coming to the center and then emanating out, right? Like the heart chakra really is connected to our etheric and our auric body. So, the interesting thing about understanding stress, because you asked me about stress, I think in particular, is that, you know, in my practice, for example, I see a lot of women in their 40s, late 40s, and the marriage, there's like a little bit of like, people are kind of going, they're not kind of converging and like going like this. They're either doing this or they're doing this, right? And I think a lot of people blame things on, oh, it's my hormones, or oh, it's my husband wants this, or oh, it's I don't want this, but he wants that, or I desire to do this, but he wants me to be the same person. And there's all these like regular ways of categorizing it. But in reality, you know, if we think about how the body is, our bodies we literally have different bodies every 7 years. Like even though what we think and we have the memories and experience of being 10, 40 years ago, right? Our liver is a completely different liver than it was 30 years ago, right? Or even 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. So there's this whole regenerative process in the body. And yet then we still have how the cells kind of break down, and then that has to get gotten rid of. And then we have the energy of the universe, the energy of our of our immediate environment, and then our internal, how do we cultivate the internal environment so that we're cleaning our energy, so that we're listening to what our bodies are telling us of our environment. And the most unfortunate thing is that women in their 40s, as their cycle begins to change, they become even more disassociated with the body, because the cycle is no longer this element of telling them how the last month went for them. That's what our cycle is. It's our fifth vital sign, right? So when that starts to change, or when it becomes irregular, we become irregular because we do not have this thing that we count on. We do not have the cyclical 28-day, 31-day cycle. And that process of shifting and changing through midlife is a massive shift for women. I don't think women give it the weight that it needs. I think it feels really tumultuous. And so they focus on that feeling rather than focusing on, wow, everything is shifting and changing. I feel like a different person. How can I communicate to myself, to my family, to my partner, and to the greater world? How do I fit into the greater world? And I think that's our work, right? Like that's why kind of the world is in this sort of circumstance, is that, we've sort of not stepped up in these years of great intuitive knowing and intellectual curiosity and creative curiosity. We're sort of just coasting. And women, I challenge all of us, right, to really step into this greater role.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that there's just been such a disconnect with all of it. With, when you're talking, it reminds me of how things used to be when women were as they got older, they were the crones and they were the wise women, and they were revered in their villages, and go talk to her, she knows all the things. And it's definitely changed. And like you're saying, the disconnect from all of it, but the disconnect from the earth and the elements as well. And we've gotten swept up into this really fast moving world. And I know a lot of people, at least the ones in some of a lot of the women that we know, are tending to reclaim that again, and r- rejoin and love that, those elements again, and learning, like you're saying about the chakras and the roots. And I do think, as you're talking about the chakra system, thinking about how many people want to connect to the upper chakras, they want to be the spiritual connection. But like you said, the root and the sacral, I had no idea until a couple of years ago that the root chakra was so um, involved with family, and what experiences.
Survival.
Yeah,
Just
what were your family
yeah.
experiences? And okay, how is that chakra doing after some of your family experiences that maybe you haven't been able to work through, energetically or emotionally or whatever. And so again, like all these things that we're holding on to that are incredible. But yeah, to reclaim and to start to know our bodies again, I feel like we definitely, over the last few decades, have. I think we're changing. I think our generation, but I've this is again noticing with my aunts and my uncles and my mom, that if the doctor says it, then that's just it. There is
Yeah.
no thinking past the
No.
doctor handing you the whatever the diagnosis is,
Mhm.
whatever the prescriptions are. And I think that we're hopefully that our generation is starting to change that. We're like, wait, there's other ways to deal with this, there's other things. And I'm just not accepting it and trying to reclaim, a lot of this back. I think it's really an interesting shift. And I love what you said about our body's changing and growing a new body every 7 years. I'm not sure how many, of our listeners like knew that. I've heard it a few times, but even to wrap your head around that
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
still like, wait, no, same body. Like
Yeah.
we're like, no, wait, I still have the same body. But I think a lot of us see how over looking back over the years, our bodies have changed in different ways. But to think about it every 7 years, that seems pretty rapid to me.
Of course. I mean, the brilliance of the body to be able to regenerate itself. And yet we spend billions of dollars a year in the beauty industry to put things on us to maintain that youthful look. and many of them, most of them, the majority of them are toxic and we don't need them anyway. But like, why would we not give ourselves the credit, give our brilliant vessels the credit of what we can do, but yet only be fed and really believe? Like, if enough of us said no to the chemicals, no to the injectables, no to the surgeries, and claimed the beauty that we are as an aging population. I don't really, I use the phrase gathering time because it really is, and it is a travel of gathering time. That is what the aging process is. And so if you think about it as gathering something and then, releasing other things, that's what our skin represents. That's what our organs represent. And the fact that we can do this over and over again is a true testament to evolution. If you think about it, I mean, people usually didn't live past 30 something, and now we're living to, some to the 80s unhealthily. And then there are, like I said, many tens of thousands that are living to 100, but with great success and love and connection to the land, to their animals, to the cultivating an internal environment and an external environment. And I think that is what this new calling is part of this time that we're living in. Our souls chose this time to sort of enter into this human experience, and we're all part of like creating this new paradigm, if you will. I mean, I know we're really going off on a tangent, but I do think we've been called, and those of us who feel the calling feel it quite strongly. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, boy, I'm just so invested in this. I love it all. I really had no idea that I was going to connect with you on so much. I mean, so much of my mindset has changed since my experience, and it just keeps, and I'm again in a similar situation, trying to encourage my mom to like see other things and see
mhm.
things like when she says certain things about how she's feeling, and I say, well, what did you eat the last couple days? And she's like, and like, how much dairy have you had the last couple days? And she's like, no, no, haven't hardly had any. And then I go, really? So tell me what you ate. And then it's, all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, so this is potentially why you're, feeling some of the things you're feeling today. And,
exactly.
hoping to get her to be more aware. And I have, relatives who are diabetic and have been for years and years and years and are on dialysis, and some of the things with that I just am like, again, like, how are you just that really really strong disconnect with your body where you're just okay, and this is just the way it is for me, and it has been for so long, but not even adjusting dietary like dietary things to try to support your own body, and it's just so interesting to me. And like I said, we're not even talking the energetics and the chakras and all the extra stuff
No,
that
yeah,
that so I mean just the basics. And so I'm really just loving all of this. So you you work with women one on one, you work with women in groups. Tell me a little bit more about how you work with women as the body whisperer.
totally. So the my newest iteration of working is really sort of rec- really gathering the women who are invested in their own journey and invested in being an active participant. And so I work with women on every level. So I work with women in small groups. I work with women for a month. I do the body whisper session, which is a single session. That's a rather new. In April, I just ran a special on my Facebook group, and I had like 30 something women sign up. I couldn't believe it. I've done master classes where I've only had like 10 women sign up, and this was, it was a beautiful thing. It made me realize, like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm actually stepping into this real thing, and people are interested. And so it's turned into a 60-minute session where, I listen to women talk about what's going on, and sometimes I interrupt them, and sometimes I let them go on, and then I talk a little bit, and then we do like a 20-25 minute journey into their body. And then at the end, I sort of talk to them. I say, what did you get from this? And this is what I got. And I think you should start here. And what about that? And from there, usually something comes of it. And women have They have a place to go to that feels theirs, that feels connected to them because their body spoke to them. And I think for a lot of women, it might actually, other than childbirth, be the first time that they really had that kind of powerful experience within their body, because I'm able to hold that space. It's a powerful space, but and I can't hold space for everybody all the time, but this session is particularly powerful. And then there are, like I said, month long, and then I work with women privately, which is a whole nother level. And I'm thinking this year about maybe doing a retreat, although it's a big endeavor with the craziness of the world and travel being sort of a little, you know,
Still questionable.
yeah, questionable, unstable, like gas and price. I don't know, who knows what's going into it, but I'm I'm putting that on hold, I think, for now. But I'm just having the best time working, fully stepping in and claiming what I do, which was it was I was always like everyone's best kept secret. And in fact, someone said that they're like, "You're like the best kept, you're like my guru kept secret." And I'm like, I don't want to be a secret. Like I remember someone saying that and me thinking like, I don't want to be a secret. So it's just good to sort of come out and be really like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And I really do combine both. I mean, I do tons of data collection on myself and testing on myself because I do love that side of it. And then when I do that testing and then I do the integrative, and the energetic, that's where I really see that those when we bring those two together, it's just such a beautiful, it's a poignant moment in the body, in time, in health, in my own evolution. And it's so empowering. Like, never do I walk into a doctor's office and don't feel like I'm holding the reins. And in fact, I'm lucky in that in my 40s, I've just collected, no matter where I've lived, I've collected this really incredible group of people. And it used to be I had to search for them, and now I know that I magnetize them. And that's a big difference in how my body vibrates. Like, it vibrates at a different frequency where I'm magnetizing and I don't have to search. And once you recognize that, it's like such a different way of being and thinking and creation. And I mean, I'm only 50. Like, I can't wait for the next 50. Like, it's going to be such a ride because I've figured a lot of this out and I'm on this trajectory that feels so good. And I think that that's what I want to show women is available to everybody. This is available to everybody, not just the select few who know or pay or believe. It's actually available to every woman who desires it,
I
who
love
believes
it.
they're worthy of it, right?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's the thing. For you to be able to share that and want to share it. I mean, you aren't keeping it a secret. And I also love that, you're a funny thing happened on the way to my life was your mom, this
Yes.
connection with your mom, this beautiful connection and helping her, to heal her body. And then also, you being able through that to step, I mean, that's just such a beautiful connection of how that unfolded. And for you to be just claiming this and stepping in more and more into what you have to offer. And I mean, yeah, of course, like when you talk, I can just, well, I mean, I can see you. So for the people who can't see you, who are listening, like you're just, you are magnetizing. Like why wouldn't you want to be drawn in and have this for your own body? I'm sold. Like, sign me up. I'm ready. I'm ready to do it. Like, why wouldn't you be? It sounds amazing, and again to be able to say whatever age you're at, if you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s,
Yeah, doesn't
but
matter.
keep it moving, keep it going. So, to be able to work with you and to find these things. Because I agree, like we're not connected. And I mean, years ago when I was a child, I had appendicitis, had my appendix out. And a few years ago, I was working with a masseuse, and she said, "Do you ever like massage your scar?" Because I have a pretty good scar from it. And I was like, I forgot, I forgot it's there,
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, wait, yeah. maybe my body could use a little healing there, a little love for that area and that, that piece of it that was removed, and so but I think we do forget about some of the, maybe the broken bones that we had as children or the sprains and the whatever, but maybe we don't because some of them creep back up and you're like, oh yeah, that was that broken ankle I had, that's still bothering me. And for you to be able to say, okay, let's let that go, let's connect back to your body and get these, get your systems working, your organs working, and then carry that forward. That, I
Definitely.
think, that's the huge part, is to be able to carry it forward and say, okay, I'm going to feel better going forward.
Definitely, definitely. You brought up an interesting point about operations and about the removal of organs, and it's so very commonplace in our medical system. And I think what I really encourage women to do, and I worked with a woman who had had as much taken out as you possibly could: appendix, uterus, ovaries, gallbladder. She'd had part of her spleen worked on. Part of her thyroid had been I mean, literally, like, the list of things that had been removed. And I said to her, I said, though the energy of those organs is still in your body, just because the actual tissue is gone, they still, the body still reads that as there's a resonance there. So it's interesting that you say that. I've worked with so many women who've had C-sections, and they don't recognize the guilt or the shame or the pain or the trauma that was created around those scars and in that particular chakra system, and how that affects the hips, the lower back, the knees, mobility. It's amazing. And again, it doesn't create any pain, like, it's just a scar, and yet that scar creates scar tissue and what's held in that tissue. And what was the energy around that operation. I mean, I had two C-sections. One was the emergency, and in fact, I wanted to mention that because I said there were two elements. The second time, when I was working with my mom, and I stepped into and I recognized the energy, I recognize the invitation to step in. The first invitation that really opened my eyes was when I was on the operating table delivering my first son, and it was an emergency C-section. My placenta was abrupting. So I was watching his heartbeat like go way down, and they were like yelling at me on the operating table. And then at one point I was like pinned down and I was shaking, and I could feel myself moving between two realms, and all my angels were above me, like a whole collection of angels. Like, I don't know how many, but it was so many, and I kept feeling myself wanting to go, but them holding me here. And I remember not talking about that for years. I held that in because I thought that was some kind of weird, like, this doesn't really happen. You were imagining it. You were medicated. You were this, you were that. But that was my first beginning of them saying to me, we're giving you this experience so that you recognize that we are real and that this is as powerful as it is. And then I didn't actually step into it until I had another near death experience with my mother. So the spirit realm and the energy realm, we are so very connected. It is not this sort of like way out at arm's length, right? Like, it is very close to us at any given moment. And again, what a gift, because I did get the prize at the end of that, really, really traumatizing surgery. My son and I have an amazing connection, but I remember that and the trauma that I carried and what I had to release in my sacral in order to be able to access and harness that really powerful well of creativity and knowledge and drive and, self assurance and belief in who I am and what I'm here to do. It was years in the making. So I'm so glad you brought that up about your appendix, because it's very true about surgery and about scars and about really sort of working through what that means to have a surgery. There's nothing
Well,
bad about it. It's necessary sometimes.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I would imagine there are a lot of women who've had similar experiences to what you have as far as the C-section and the trauma. Like you're saying, like when I'm listening to you say, I'm held down and they're screaming at me. What a terrible experience. Like, instead
Yeah.
of, like, here's your childbirth experience of, like, that I mean, body trauma, emotional trauma, all of it. But like you said, yes, you have a beautiful son from that. So that, thank goodness. But and then to also not be able to speak about, your spiritual experience with that as well. But what I think it's so commonplace when we're talking about having surgeries that even, what they call minor surgeries, what I've
Mhm.
come to realize in the past few years is like, no, it's all still a big trauma for your body, like
Yeah.
minor, quote unquote, minor or not, your body and maybe even your emotions of, being, afraid of what's going to happen and, whatever it is, and people making more light of it now. Well, it's just in, outpatient surgery. Okay, still, I mean, all of it is still, for a lot of people, going to the dentist and having their teeth
Mhm.
cleaned is
Mhm.
traumatizing. So if you're
Mhm.
actually cutting your body open for any reason,
Yeah.
it's still traumatic. And I think that to allow ourselves to recognize that again, like you're
Mhm.
saying, and a lot of times I agree, it is necessary to have a body part removed, but our body parts are also here for a reason. So if we can heal them, if we're able to, work with someone who can, help fix them, a lot of them do reject, are able. I know someone who was basically going to go. They told this guy, like, your liver's done, like, you're done. And he straightened up and, you know did things, and he's doing really well now, and it's been a couple years. So, there are ways to do it, but I love the idea of what you do. And for me, I'm definitely gonna we're gonna talk about about this, because I want to experience this, and I hope our listeners as well, are, you know interested in learning more about it at the very least, and being open to experiencing things, and understanding more about our bodies, and reconnecting back with our bodies more. And I love what you do. I really I This has been incredible, and I think, I don't know, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us today? I'm just blown away. I can't even. I mean, I love it all.
I know it's been a really great conversation, but it's also just being open and receptive, right? I think the last thing I'll leave, to end our conversation together, if you desire, is just to let women know that to being open and receptive, that there are signs and symbols everywhere all the time working for you. And if you're not seeing them, if you're not able to perceive the signs and symbols that are here to guide you, then there is a disconnect. And so to not beat yourself up about it, but actually to go inward and really connect with yourself. And the simplest connection is to literally, and it sounds so ridiculous, to take your shoes off and to allow yourself to really neutralize your energy with the earth, bare feet to the earth. It can be your driveway, it can be your front yard. Hopefully you're not putting chemicals on it, but like, it just doesn't need to be a beautiful Instagrammed beach, or some Sedona, some sacred space. Like, literally, if you set the intention to neutralize your energy and to really feel what the earth is trying to tell you, you can do that if you do this, just a quick grounding exercise every morning. And the light of the sun, there's nothing more healing than the light of the sun. So between those two things, you bring those two together, and you can heal almost anything. So I thank you so much, Laura. It's been such a pleasure to hold this space together and to feel your energy, that you have so much to give, and to for your listeners to have this opportunity. It's a true gift. So thank you.
Well, I'm so grateful for you, and I love these last, simple steps that you've given our listeners that they can take to help their bodies, just even, on that level. Before we go, it'll be in the show notes, but tell our listeners where they can find you, online, social, whatever.
Definitely. So I do have a website, websites aren't they just they're a labor of love, right? They're kind of like this ongoing labor of love. So that's what mine is right now. It's an ongoing labor of love. But my website is michelleaspinwall.com. You can reach, I have a Facebook group that like this minute, but I think in a week or two it's going to be called something different. But right now it's called Hormone Mastery Over 40. I welcome, you don't even have to be 40. It's just kind of what I wanted to name the group 3 years ago. It's going to be switching and changing into more of this body whisper energetic realm. But I do still do lives and talk about hormones. And then of course, Instagram, I am Michelle P as in Peter Aspinwall, Michelle P. Aspinwall.
Wonderful. Oh, again, thank you so much. I've loved our conversation today, and I want to thank our listeners for joining us
Yeah,
as well.
thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for listening to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. For more information, visit my website at www.lauramuirhead.com.